What's up, War Report family? You got Ike Jones. We are back in the saddle talking a little more Auburn football. Auburn recruiting is on a heater right now, and there's no better person to talk Auburn recruiting than our guy Dukes, the Scoop from On3, here to give y'all all the tidbits about what he knows with Auburn recruiting. Dukes, what's up, man?
Hey, what's going on, man? It's a very cold summer right now.
And right now, it does seem as if it's a little chilly, even though outside it might feel a little different. But if you are in the vicinity of down there in Auburn, Alabama, you might be feeling a slight chill. Um, crazy activity happening. We talked a little bit before Big Cat Weekend happened, and you were confident that Auburn was going to be in a place where the momentum was going to pick up. And I'll be doggone if Dukes don't have the scoop. Auburn is out here doing the big one.
Yeah.
Doing all of listen, man, just recently, of course, on Big Cat had 2 commitments from the 2025 class, 3 for the 2026 class, currently listed as the number 1 recruiting class for 2026. And then subsequent to Big Cat weekend, had a couple of more recruits and a couple more still rumored to be in the pipeline. What are you feeling about the momentum that Auburn has right now on the recruiting side?
I think it doesn't get any hotter than Auburn right now when it comes to recruiting nationwide. I even just sometimes like to go look at what other boards are saying or for other team sites. And Auburn is the talk of recruiting right now. I think when you think about the 3 players that they got to commit, like these are 3 guys that all had major options. Blake Woodby was somebody who you pluck out of the Northeast, really good cornerback. Then you come back and you get a guy like Antonio Coleman, the flip back, and
Right.
from that point, you go and you get a guy like Anquan New Boy Fagans.
Hmm.
What it does is it shifts the balance in Alabama. The last time we saw something like this where all of the top players in Alabama went to one of the schools, is when Alabama had their run.
Right.
And we haven't seen all of the top right now. The only top guy, I think the whole top 10 is either committed to Auburn or none of the top 10 is committed to Alabama. I think the only 2 guys in
No.
the top 10 that are committed elsewhere, depending on what site you look at, it be Zion Grady, who's committed to Ohio State, who was at Big Cat, and
Right.
Naeem Alford, who's also committed to Ohio State, who was at Big
It was
Cat.
also Big Cat, right? Yeah.
Right. So,
And we didn't even talk about Derek Smith, right, making his commitment as well.
oh
So
yeah, I
Auburn
forgot
is
about
really
Derek Smith. Yeah.
and so much been happening. It's hard to keep up with it, man. But yeah, 8 of the top 10 guys in the state of Alabama already committed to Auburn, and 2 more who are not committed to an Alabama school. Both Ohio State guys, both at Big Cat weekend. So, like you say, it's hard for me to picture someone who or a program that is on a more consistent winning streak right now in those battles in recruiting than Auburn is as far as picking up those commitments. Um, Now we didn't talk too much about this since then. You were not at Big Cat Weekend, but
Mm-mm.
what were you hearing coming out of Big Cat Weekend from those that were present? From whether it was recruits that you might have talked to since then, or people who were present and kind of reading the tea leaves of what's happening.
Auburn is the wave right now. Auburn has a wave. To speak like the kids say, Auburn got the wave.
Mhm.
At this moment, I think they plotted it out the way they wanted it to go, where they wanted to make a splash at Big Cat so they can keep the mystique and the aura around it. And I think when Alabama was making their push early July, it looked like Auburn was pushed down into the teens, and it was what is Hugh gonna do, and uh, doom and gloom and despair, and do we have the
Right.
right guys? But the whole time, I think I put out a tweet, and we talked about that before. I was just like, "Hey, bro, it's about to get cold on the plains," and
Yeah.
I got it from a pretty reliable source that just stay tuned towards the end of the month, and I got a list of the names, and every name on that list committed, and it's a name on that list that uh is not nobody talking about, that if they get this guy, it's gonna make shockwaves. So
Yeah.
I just think that Auburn, the vibes at Auburn right now is destination,
Mm.
not speed bump, not temporary, not because I couldn't get anything else. It's
Right.
destination. I think a lot of times when you think about Alabama, that's one of those gold schools, and you don't hear about Auburn in those conversations as much because they don't have the championship pedigree recently. But
Right.
when you think about Alabama, who they want and who Auburn's getting, Georgia, when you're beating these teams for guys, Ohio State, when you're competing, and Kayin Lee was really the start to this.
Mm,
When Kayin Lee flipped from Ohio State to Auburn, or decommitted or flipped, or however he went that year, that was the start when you got Kayin Lee. Toward at the end, I think that was Hugh
right.
Freeze's first year. You get Kayin Lee at the end. Um, I think right after that, it started to change because a guy like Kayin Lee, who left the Penn State game at halftime that
Mm,
year when Penn State came to Auburn and drubbed them, like that is that's when I kind of started to say, I'm like, all right, is Auburn is about to be cool again. And now
mm,
you're starting to see the effects of these guys who haven't seen Auburn. Like I always say, I say this ad nauseum. A 17-year-old right now does not remember the Cam Newton season. They
right.
don't remember. They definitely don't remember the '04 season, and they
Right.
they and they barely remember, if at all, the 2013-14 season. So you have to introduce Auburn to as a championship place to them, and they're going to be the guys that help build it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's a good point that you make about K. Lee kind of being one of those guys that was I think a name where a lot of Auburn fans were surprised to see, right? Like Keldrick Falk was the big, okay, if we can get this guy, it'll be successful. When Lee's name came across, you're like, whoa, wait a minute, what just happened?
Right.
Like, where did that come from? Like, an Ohio State DB commit is now in the coffers of Auburn. How did this just happen? And I think that was probably the thing when you look back at it. Like, of course, Keldrick Falk was a big get that year, but it was that move that had me, like, let me not speak for anybody else, that had me say, okay, Coach Freeze is always gonna have a little sum up his sleeve that nobody was seeing coming.
Mm-mm.
And that was the one. You
Yep.
fast forward into the next recruiting cycle, it wasn't necessarily as shocking once Jimbo Fisher got fired, but Cam Coleman becomes the guy that next season where it's like, okay, is he gonna be able to pull this off? And Cam Coleman suiting up for Auburn this year. You had already made Perry Thompson happen. You had already made Malcolm Simmons happen. You had already pulled off the Bryce Kane situation. So you had those three guys. Now, if somehow they had gotten KJ Bolden and were able to what's the kid's name that went to Bama, the other wide receiver,
Ryan Williams.
Ryan Williams. Now, if they had pulled that off, then we'd have been
Yeah.
talking seismic shift in what people were expecting from a recruiting standpoint. But still, being able to pull off four of the five wide receiver recruiting targets that you had at the top of your board, not just bringing in four guys. I'm talking about the top of your board. You had four guys' names on there, and you brought in four of those five guys. That's an amazing haul for one recruiting cycle. You again, you add to that what happened previously the year before with Keldrick Faulk and Lee, and you start to paint a picture of what this recruiting landscape and the momentum that's happening with the program in terms of recruiting. And all of this happening while Auburn has gone 6-7 for two consecutive seasons, or
Man,
6-6 and then 6-7.
man. And it speaks to not being able to recruit behind the logo. But
Mm,
now, when you have the players, if they put it, I'm telling you, I say, man, Auburn is a powder keg.
mm,
Auburn goes out here and you beat one of these big time teams, you get 9 wins, bro. It's up, it's
yeah,
up, it's up, and
yeah,
it looks like it's gonna be stuck.
yeah, yeah. Listen, you're one of those situations where you get some proof of concept on the field, and we've talked about this before, that like I don't know how that just doesn't continue to be a big boulder rolling downhill that you have to figure out how to stop the momentum of, because uh the recruiting staff, I talked about this a little bit on our last show on Sunday. The recruiting staff that Coach Hugh Freeze has put together, particularly on the defensive side, you've got guys who, if everything is going well, they're probably going to retire as Auburn coaches, right? When you
Yeah,
talk about Chad, not Chad Kelly, but when you talk about Kelly, when you talk about Crime, they don't really want to go nowhere else. They would be fine being defensive coaches on this staff until they retire. So you've got some really great recruiters over there that are set in, that as long as Coach Hugh Freeze keeps things rolling, they should be set on that side of the football. And then when you look on the offensive side, you've got some young guys that are up and coming that if they stick around for a couple of years, you can have more continuity than an Auburn staff has had for a very long time. Because you look at like Derek Nix, this is his first offensive coordinator opportunity. He's not, unless Auburn goes to a national championship and the offense goes crazy this year, he's not jumping ship to go get another job as a an OC somewhere else. Um, Coach Ben looks like he's locked in for a minute. Coach Thornton doesn't look like Kent Austin's gonna be with Coach Freak. Like, so this staff can have a lot of continuity and a lot of the pieces that have produced this momentum going for a couple of years. And that's something Auburn has not been able to say for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you get it from the head guy, when the head guy's a recruiter, that allows guys to be able to stay in place. You don't have to go get the hot guy who can recruit
Right.
because you're struggling on the recruiting. You can get guys who know football and let Coach Freeze do what he has to do. And
Yeah.
Hugh Freeze is closing a lot of these. He's doing a great job closing a lot of these guys. Is Coach Freeze, and you'll
Right.
talk to him. And I talk to multiple players that have Coach Freeze's number.
Yeah.
And they talk to him. There's some coaches that they are not talking to the head coach as much as they want to. You're gonna be able to talk to Coach Hugh Freeze. And that's one of the I think that's one of the feathers in this cap when it comes to recruiting, especially when you look at the recruiter style of his predecessor, is night and day. And
Right.
it's allowed Auburn to really jump back into the forefront, back to back top 10 classes. I mean, I would bet my house that Auburn ends up top 10, and I feel like they're going to be able to close out at least top 5,
Yeah.
maybe
Listen,
top 7 at the least.
they're already in the top 5 again, right? If you're looking at a couple of the recruiting sites right now, and you're really, and I said this the other day, you're really one 5-star recruit because there's no consensus 5-star on there. There's some guys that you expect potentially will get their 5-star. Blake Woodby, right? He's a top 25 ESPN recruit right now. Likely will be a 5-star once they start putting the numbers together on that. You expect that if you keep some of the guys that are there along the defensive front there, they're likely going to get a 5th star, right? So there's some guys that can earn a 5th star, but a guy who came in as a 5-star when they made the commitment hasn't locked that player down yet. But you're just one of those guys away, really, from jumping into the top 5 and staying there from being in that place.
Sizzle alert. This is summer. Let the only thing smoking at your barbecue be the grill, not your grooming game. Smoking grooming game.
Yeah.
Get ready for the ultimate cookout season with Manscaped. Whether you're flipping burgers or cannonballing into the pool, make sure that your meat looks neat with Performance Package 5.0. Fire up your grooming routine and keep it cool with Manscaped. Head to manscaped.com and use code report for 20% off plus free shipping. Let's make this summer sizzle for all the right reasons. Guys, you got it. You heard me.
But we're talking to Dukes of Scoop right now, right here on the War Report Podcast Network, Auburn Express Podcast. And Duke, one of the things, or my guy that I want to talk about that a lot of Auburn fans want to hear about is the quarterback. We talked about this a little bit. Do you feel as if push comes to shove, regardless of what is going to happen, Auburn is going to sign a quarterback this recruiting cycle?
They're gonna get a quarterback. I mean, they're going to get a quarterback, and it's guys that are committed to schools, smaller schools that I think the same thing that Alabama was able to do with Keelan Russell, being able to
Mm,
kind of Debo SMU a little bit. I think they'll be able to do that with some more quarterback recruits once they identify who they want. Right now, all the buzz is about Deuce Knight and KJ Lacey, who are both committed to other schools. There are other guys who are good. You talk about like a Ty Hawkins who's committed to SMU. Not sure how
mm,
far they are in on him, but when you think about what Hugh Freeze likes to do, Kamari Taylor, Mississippi State, guy from Mississippi. You think Hugh Freeze doesn't have a couple of people saying, "Hey man, this guy who's committed to Mississippi State is pretty doggone good," and he is. I think he's going to be one of the guys towards the end of the cycle. Kamario Taylor is going to be a guy that I think you'll see Auburn kind of kick the tires on to see what
mm.
type of traction they can get there. But yeah, they're gonna sign a quarterback this class. They're going to get a high school guy, and you'll see them be very very persuasive when it comes to their recruiting, and it's going to look like a destination school. As all they got to do is put a couple of wins together. You come out of
Yeah.
that first 5-5-1, even 4-2 with a quality win. I think that first 6, excuse me. I think you come out of those first few games with a quality win, then it kind of changes the dynamic of recruiting, especially at the quarterback position. Once you see proof of concept for how the quarterback position looks, that's another thing that's hampered Auburn a little bit. Like
Right.
last year, how did the quarterback position look? So I think
Yeah.
people are eager to see how the quarterback position looks, how the offense looks with Hugh Freeze pulling the strings. And I think, yeah, Auburn 1000% ends up with a quarterback in this class.
Okay. Okay. I mean, listen, that is a worry for a lot of people who are following recruiting. They're saying, listen, man, you can't have a recruiting class that does not include a quarterback if you want to really put together the kind of skill position players around that QB. The other thing that is kind of hotly contested, and we've talked about this a little bit, but just kind of getting a recap or of this coming out of Big Cat Weekend because some of these guys were there, is the running back position, right? So you've got your one guy that's in there right now, but most people would agree that Auburn's going to take two this cycle. When you look at the running back situation, Jarquez Hunter's going to be out of there. Brian Batty, he's going through his situation. He wasn't coming back next season anyway. He was done with eligibility after that. Same thing with Sean Jackson. He's really kind of just barely there right now. So you only would have two scholarship running backs going into next season, and depending upon how this season goes, will determine whether or not you go into next spring with two running backs. But you need 4 to 5, right? Like to really be in the place you want to be. So the way that Coach Hugh Freeze is lining them up, he's got his third that's there, and he seems like he's really on the boat. Um, where is it seeming like it's going to be with that other running back position?
Yeah, I think it's between Dwayne Morris and Usman Cromer out of Lee County. I think it's one of
Okay,
those two guys. Both have a really downhill running style that'll pair well with the guy like Alvin Henderson. So I think when it comes to that second back, you want more of a bruiser so you can do things, especially when it comes in the goal line. Doesn't matter how tall you are; it's the running style more so than the profile. So I
right.
think that you'll see Cromer. Cromer is the perfect fit, bigger guy. We haven't had one of the guys. Kind of reminds me of Javon Robinson a few years ago.
Mm,
Taller guy, thick, really runs behind his pads really well. Not going to give you a whole lot in terms of wiggle, but he's somebody that you see him in the phone booth, you're not going to want to be in that phone booth. So yeah,
mhm.
definitely, I think one of those two guys ends up in the class at this point. And then, as I always say, there's always guys that Auburn has tabs on that pop up throughout the year that have a great senior season, who develop late, and who Auburn is probably watching right now to say, you know what, we're going to go on this guy. But I definitely expect for them to get at least one more running back, and I wouldn't be surprised if they took it. If they could stand to take three.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely could. And that's been something that a lot of people have been postulating on whether or not they go ahead and pull the trigger on three. Because again, you're going to have the space to do that in this running back room. And the question is going to be about whether or not you can keep all those guys happy. But listen, if you get the offense humming, then you have the opportunity to really develop that pipeline of saying, okay, it's going to be a succession. You're going to be the guy, then you're going to be the guy, then you're going to be the guy, and you'll have the opportunity to get everybody in there. Because I think people forget this about skill players that I say all the time. It doesn't take 3 or 4 years of productivity to get to the NFL.
Right.
You really one solid year and flashes in the small opportunities you get, and you're out of here. That's
Right.
it.
It don't take all what hey man, it's an old saying. It don't take all day to do nothing. So when
Yeah.
it comes to that 1 year, it don't take but one. We see it all the time. And then the flip side of that is too, I was gonna say, I think that if I were to predict, I would say two running backs and a portal guy, because you
Mm,
don't it's gonna be hard to kind of have three guys learning pass pro. You want somebody who's
mm,
already done it before, who can spell. If Damari Austin comes back, depending on the year he has, you want somebody who can spell him, who's not a liability and who can also run between the tackles. And then you also like Jeremiah Cobb, more of a slender back speed, back third down, back type guy. He can run, but he's very tough. But you want somebody who can kind of lay the hammer down when if you're going max pro, you want a running back who you trust in the backfield. And I think Damari Austin can't be the only guy that can
right.
do that. And it's hard to trust a true freshman to be able to pick up all the pass pro. So I think they'll go two in high school from the high school ranks and one from the portal.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. As far as trying to make sure that you're building out a roster, and I'm sure they've got their eyes and ears open. That's one of the things that you make sure. That's why you got Will Redmond on the staff to make sure that you're doing the evaluations for all those sort of things. Last thing I want to ask you about here, Dukes, before I let you get up out of here, is the wide receiver position, right? There are a couple of guys that Auburn has been rumored to be involved with, right? You got one of your guys with Derek Smith, right? But the kid, the big name, or I guess the biggest name that's being rumored right now is the kid over there that's committed currently to Georgia Tech. But it seems as if Auburn's got some interest in him. Any smoke to that, or any fire to that smoke that's out there?
Yeah, man. Sam Turner, cold
Mhm.
blooded. very slept on. Played with the best. He's another Hustle Inc. kid. I always talk about the guys from the Hustle Inc. program. Last year played Mike Matthews, Ken Lee, Jalen Crawford. The list goes on. To KJ Bolden. He's one of those kids, and he's always played well. Stayed at Southwestern Cab, which was a powerhouse in the 90s under Buck Godfrey, but hasn't had the same success as things. And every school wants him. He was one of those guys. Come to Buford, come to Carrollton to play with Juju. To whatever school, come to Douglas County. But he stayed at Southwestern Cab, and people have a ton of respect for him. And I think that if he did stay at Georgia Tech, it's because he knows that he will maybe be a focal point of that offense as soon as he steps on campus. But I think Auburn is pushing really hard for him, and he's liking the experience. But I think it's going to be one of those things, exactly like Eric Singleton from a couple of years ago. Auburn jumped in late. He was already committed to Tech. He was committed to Western Kentucky for a long time. He blows up, and then he goes his freshman year and he's All-American. So I think Sam Turner has that same type of trajectory where if he goes to Georgia Tech, he could probably be one of those guys in that Eric Singleton mode because he's that game ready. And I think that if he came to Auburn, he may have to be a little more patient. So I think that's probably what he's weighing when it comes down to two schools like Auburn and Georgia Tech. But I think Auburn really has a good shot as anybody to get him in the class.
Makes sense to me. I like all of what I'm hearing right there as an Auburn fan. I am definitely hoping Auburn's able to pull off some of this stuff. But we're going to get out of here, man. Dukes, I appreciate you taking a little time to talk with us, man. As always, of course, if you're living under a rock and you don't know, let the people know how they can keep up with all the things that you got going over there at On3.
Man, check out my OnlyFans. No, I'm just kidding. At Dukes D Scoop on Twitter and Instagram. Dukes D Scoop. Follow me, check me out, and the 5-star flex on YouTube On3 Recruits.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. Well, we will definitely tap back in with my man Dukes the Scoop once we get a little bit closer to early signing day, so we can get some more of that recruiting talk. But this ain't gonna be the last time we got Dukes on here because Dukes the homie. So y'all know we gonna be back through here with Dukes coming through doing some major talk about the season because it is on the cusp. And we got plenty to talk about when it comes to that. But we are out of here. Until the next time, make sure y'all check in with us, like this video, subscribe to the channel. We are the War Report everywhere on social media, except for TikTok, which we're TW Report. But until the next time, and as always, War Eagle.